Welcome to AIBiz, where innovation meets human transformation. I'm your host, Sayan, and today's conversation sits right at the intersection of courage, science, and healing. Our guest, Sam J. Peterson, is a former Army bomb technician turned mental health pioneer. After surviving the depths of PTSD, he co founded MindSpa, a clinic that's redefining recovery through advanced, science backed treatments like neuroplasticity based healing. Today, we're going to be exploring how new approaches to healing, blending neurosciences, compassion, and courage, are reshaping the mental health landscape for veterans, first responders, and anyone who's ever really felt trapped in their own mind. So, take a deep breath with me because this one's about hope, healing, and what happens when the mind learns how to rewire itself. So, welcome to the show, Samish. I'm absolutely honored to have you here with me today.
Oh, thanks for having me, Sayan. Appreciate it.
Amazing. Sam, before we get right into the heart of today's conversation, I want to talk about your story, which feels like one of the rare ones that comes full circle. From surviving the unimaginable to helping others find their way back from it. And what's remarkable, I would say, is that your mission didn't begin in a lab; it actually began on the battlefield. So let's start right there. How did your personal battle with PTSD lead to founding MindSpa?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing that made an impact on me mental health wise was losing friends and a mentor to suicide. You know, being a bomb technician, you never really get taught how high the suicide rate is in the field. So there's a constant exposure that's going on with your body and traumatic blast waves. And after
Mm,
seeing my friends suffer with this for so long and losing several of them to suicide, we finally decided to do something about it and go out and find better solutions to these problems with the brain. And we did. We went out and created, a couple of different protocols that can heal and rewire the brain. Then eventually created this space where we can bring people in and effectively treat the root cause of these issues.
mm. No, that's powerful, inspiring. I would say turning pain into a purpose really is a truest form of innovation. And I hear a lot of stories, different kind of innovation stories. But what stands out to me really is that you were doing it really fast. I mean, you're not only changing lives, but you're changing it fast. So I want to talk about your clinic. It offers rapid results in just 14 to 17 days. What
Yeah.
makes treatments like call it TMS or ketamine therapy so effective compared to the conventional method?
So, where our approach differs from the conventional method is the fact that we're attacking the root cause. Now, this is something that's not really talked about in psychiatry. I don't ever hear it mentioned in the circles that I run in. Is that if the patient's brain is in a state of depression, anxiety, or post-traumatic stress disorder, or it's had a traumatic brain injury, all four of those things have a couple of things in common. The first is that they create a ton of inflammation. They're highly inflammatory to the brain. And the second is they affect neural functioning. So they affect your brain's ability to talk to itself.
Hmm.
Until you address the inflammation in the brain, you are really pushing a boulder up a hill when it comes to trying to treat somebody. That is one of the reasons that talk therapy and medication management have proven to be less than effective at really getting to the root of these issues. And that's what we tried to bring in to the facility is that holistic approach, treating the whole person and cutting straight to the nitty gritty so that people can get better faster. Because all of these treatments, ketamine, hyperbaric, TMS to a little bit lesser degree, they do a couple of things. They downregulate inflammation in the brain and they increase neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity, for anybody who doesn't know, is the process of your neurons branching out and creating new synaptic connections. It's how we form habits. It's how we change the brain. And we can supercharge that process with different treatments.
Wow. It's kind of incredible how only, I would say, 250 years ago, maybe 300 years ago, we thought, the earth is kind of flat, but here we are today, talking about neuroscience and, you know, uh, increasing the progress in your brain and creating synapses, like you mentioned. I think it's science meeting soul, precision meeting compassion. And I imagine that from a coming from a military background, Sam, you have seen firsthand how trauma really reshapes people, not just in the body, but in identity. So that makes me wonder, as a veteran yourself, what misconceptions do you see around trauma recovery and mental health, especially in, I would say, high stress professions?
I think the biggest misconception is the idea that this is a permanent state, that being traumatized is a permanent state. That is one of the biggest reasons that we have a mental health epidemic in our country is because of the stigma that's attached to getting mental health treatment. And all of that comes from the belief that if you get a diagnosis, a mental health diagnosis, that you are stuck with that for the rest of your life instead of a more progressive view looking at the evidence now. We know that that's not the case. You can recover from these things, and we've seen the data. We've created a lot of good data
Mm.
around that.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. I think, and do you see that stigma is finally starting to shift in people, or like, oh no?
The stigma around mental health in the first responder and veteran community is still very, very much alive. And that is because not many veterans and first responders know about these treatments. As soon as they learn about them and they realize that these outcomes are real, that stigma starts to
Mm.
fade away very quickly because,
Right.
a perfect example is traumatic brain injuries, right? There are entire TBI support groups, TBI survivor support groups. I was just on a call with one of my colleagues this morning, and he says something pretty poignant to this. He's like, "You wouldn't if I broke my ankle last year. You don't call me a broken ankle survivor. Why are we calling someone a TBI survivor when in reality we can heal that injury? We know how. It's just that mainstream medicine is a
Mm.
battleship and it does not turn quickly. But on the fringes of mainstream medicine, we have much faster boats that are able to make turns and move in the direction of regenerative therapies that can help heal and rewire the brain in a very short period of time.
Mm. I love the analogy that you gave. I think that's real. Healing really starts when honesty becomes stronger than silence. And what you said about um, vulnerability being strength ties beautifully into something you work with a biological level, which is neuroplasticity. So I want to ask you this. How do you see, because you focus on entirely on neuroplasticity, how do you see that concept change the future of mental health care going forward?
Well, I think neuroplasticity is, although it's a great medical term and it's become kind of a buzzword in the psychedelic community, one of
Mm.
the ways I would like to see mental health evolve is evolving away from thinking that just neuroplasticity alone is some kind of medical panacea. It's not. Neuroplasticity is a double-edged sword and it can cut both ways. If someone
Mm.
has if someone is not respecting psychedelic medicine, for instance, and they decide to take a large dose and go to a concert, they can easily have a really negative experience that can end them up in the hospital. That
Mm.
creates marks on the brain just as much as having a very well curated psychedelic experience within a clinical space like ours does. It is it is all about how you curate that experience that dictates the outcome.
Hmm.
And I think that's one of the big changes. I would like to see an evolution of terms a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. So when you talk about neuroplasticity, Sam, are we just talking about the cure, or are we also talking about prevention, or is it a mix of both?
I think it's a mix of both. I mean, if you look at the research that's happening around ibogaine, you know, the difference in neuroplasticity between different compounds is pretty significant. With ibogaine, from the research I've read anyway, being one of the longest lasting neuroplastic windows of any psychedelic. And I think that that is tied to the outcomes that people are seeing. I think when you wake up the brain and you create more interconnectivity, you get things firing on a different wavelength. And the research is, showing this over time. There's still a lot to uncover about how psychedelics affect the brain, but neuroplasticity alone, it's just a piece of the puzzle. We
Hmm.
still, when we're treating these disorders, we still have to address inflammation. Inflammation is one of the main things that's causing dysfunction because it cuts off blood flow to the brain. So there's more than just neuroplasticity. There's more than just inflammation. We have to be very careful about trying to fit mental health into a single bucket because this organ that we're treating is the most complex organ that we know about in the universe right now. It's its own pharmaceutical company. You
True.
can't just take a mono approach to treating this. We've seen how that does not work. So, yeah, I think it's you gotta keep an open mind and realize that everybody's kind of on this learning train together.
That's fascinating. And indeed, I agree. Like, I think the brain is indeed, uh, so far, the most complex form of creation in the universe itself. And I'm just curious to ask you this: that do you think? So, see, we talk about all this crazy uh, tech that's happening in mental health and medical fields these days, but something as simple as um, having a conversation, right, about whatever you feel with someone you know, or someone maybe close to you. How does your brain react, or process that kind of I would say conversation when you're like overwhelmed by something?
I mean, we know that as soon as stress increases, cognitive performance dips. So I would say it really depends on the nature of the conversation. Are you having a deep, meaningful conversation with your spouse about something you care about? Or are you arguing? Different parts of the brain are going to be overactive or underactive depending on the context that that conversation has. Because if you activate someone's amygdala, you're activating someone's fight, flight, or freeze response. That's going to be a
Right.
remarkably different
Scenario.
situation in your brain than, you know, giving your wife a hug.
Yeah. Agreed, agreed. I mean, it's kind of fascinating, and prove that our minds aren't broken, just waiting to be, reconnected or triggered in a good way. And the way you describe it, it gives me so much hope, not just for trauma survivors, but also for anyone who's feeling stuck right now. And as we look to the future, Sam, with technology rapidly advancing, what do you see as the next frontier in mental health treatment?
I think the next frontier in mental health treatment is going to be combining different approaches. So taking different pieces and putting them together to make a more cohesive and well-rounded outcome. Like one example of this, I think that from what I've seen, the TMS technology that's available today has a long way to go. So there are new companies that have created transcranial magnetic stimulation programs that can create customized protocols for your brain and help rewire your brain to a higher optimal function. And it's going to
Mhm.
be crazy to see what we're able to do in the next 10 years. When we talk about, using technologies like TMS with psychedelic drugs to enhance neuroplasticity, to get more out of treatment, we're going to see the cost of treatment come down, and the windows that it takes, the length of time it takes to get a clinical outcome also shrink dramatically in the next couple of years.
Yeah. Yeah. And for someone who's listening who feels, I mean, hopeless right now, what would you tell them about the power of healing, and particularly the power of mind, and what it is actually capable of achieving if you learn to harness its true power?
I mean, if you're feeling down and you're in a rut right now, just know that there absolutely is hope. And if you don't feel like you can pull yourself out of that hole, there are treatments that are designed to reset your brain bioelectrically. Ketamine is one of them. Transcranial magnetic stimulation can help rewire the brain and strengthen the prefrontal cortex so that you don't keep getting stuck in the same depressive hole. I mean, my biggest message is you don't have to be in this alone. There are, entire clinics like mine all over the world that specialize in this stuff. So really the stigma might be what's getting in your way. So this is my invitation to anybody who's listening who's stuck in that hole to reach out, ask for help, go consult an expert, and do your own research as well. It's pretty easy to run a quick AI search with your symptoms and, hey, what are the emerging treatments for major depressive disorder, for traumatic brain injury, for generalized anxiety disorder? There's so much information out there that we would be foolish to be stifled by our own understanding.
Right. That's a very powerful message that you shared, Sam. We are in this, we are bombarded with information. We're living in this era. But I think the first step really is, and this is also something I'm actually walking away with today's conversation, is that you have to be vocal about, what you're feeling, what you're observing within yourself. And honestly, it's not about just new tools or treatment like you mentioned. It's about rewriting what we believe is possible for the human mind. So that really struck with me. And Sam, just before we wrap this off, I just want to ask this on behalf of everyone who's listening to this right now. What's the best way to reach out to you?
Yeah, the best way to reach out to me and my team is through our website, mindspadenver.com. If you just fill out the contact form, my team will get back with you. We're open to taking new patients. If you want to follow us on social media, LinkedIn's the best place to find me, Sam Peterson, MBA, as well as our Facebook page and our Instagram page for MindSpa is just at MindSpa Denver.
Wonderful. Dear listeners, I'll include these details in the show notes for you so you can check them out anytime at your own convenience. And with that, we hit a mark on today's conversation. And I want to thank you, Sam. That's incredibly moving. And you remind us that the real frontier of mental health innovation isn't found in, machines or molecules. It's in the heart of and will of the people who choose to heal. So if you are someone who you know is struggling, send them this. This might be the invitation to something bigger. And remember this, healing isn't a miracle, it's a method. And it actually begins when you believe your mind can change. I am Sayan, and this is AIBiz. Until next time, stay curious, stay compassionate, and keep believing in the power of human mind.